A couple of weeks ago, my wife decided she would head over to visit our daughter and son-in-law. I figured it'd be a great opportunity to surprise everyone by showing up myself. Just as I was making my way to their front door, the neighbor called out, "Hey, wait up! I've got something for you!" Not 5 minutes later, the police arrived, and from there, everything just went off the rails. The highway ahead felt like some unfinished sentence. The I-4 just seemed endless, even though I'd driven that road more times than I could count. I was gripping the steering wheel way harder than necessary, my knuckles standing out against the dark leather. My phone was just sitting there in the cup holder, the screen blank, taunting me with its silence. It had been 3 whole days. Vivian never went this long without getting back to me. I kept glancing at the phone, knowing full well there'd been no new notifications. Still, I couldn't help it. The texts were still blinking unread, and the voicemails hung unanswered. The message I left that morning sounded pretty desperate, even to my own ears. "Viv, I'm getting worried. Just let me know you're all right. Call me back, please." Yesterday, the whole plan of surprising her with a trip to Orlando, flowers in hand, and treating Viv and Della to a nice lunch sounded fun. But now, somewhere around mile marker 68, it felt more like a rescue mission. As the signs ticked down, 40 miles, then 35, then 30 miles to go, my mind drifted back to the months leading up to Vivian's trip. Della's calls had changed, not in frequency, but in subject. Our conversations would invariably touch on money, things like needing the roof fixed or Curtis's work slowing down. Could we pitch in for the mortgage this month? And lately there were questions that seemed off, like whether we'd updated our will given the property value changes. I brought it up with Vivian after one of those calls. She was in the bedroom, folding laundry with the same calm and care as always. "She's our daughter, Otis," she'd said, hardly looking up. "She's just having a tough time. We had our rough patches too, remember?" And yes, I did remember. But there was something different about Della's voice, something that felt calculated. Or maybe I was just getting paranoid, seeing shadows where there were none. The Orlando exit came up, and I turned off the highway into the well-known sprawl of suburbia. The usual strip malls and chain diners faded into streets lined with similar-looking houses. Della's neighborhood looked exactly the same. Neat lawns, basketball hoops by driveways, and minivans parked just right. Her house was at the very end of the cul-de-sac. The lawn was perfectly mowed with those crisp lines. No newspapers littered the driveway. Everything seemed normal. I parked, shut off the engine, and sat there for a moment. Maybe I'd jumped the gun. Maybe Vivian misplaced her phone in Della's pool, left it at a restaurant, or got caught up in quality time and forgot to charge it. All perfectly reasonable explanations. I got out and walked up to the front door. The concrete felt reassuring under my feet. Normal. I rang the doorbell, listening to its echo inside. Waited, counted to 30, and tried again. Still nothing. I tried the door handle, locked. Peered through the window, hands cupped around my eyes. The living room sat empty, furniture exactly where it had been during our last Christmas visit. No lights, no movement. I pulled out my phone and dialed Della's number. It rang a few times, then went to voicemail, her cheery recording greeting me. "Hey, this is Della. Can't get to the phone, but leave a message and I'll call back ASAP." I didn't bother leaving one. I called Curtis next. Same scenario, ringing, then voicemail. His message was terse, more professional. "Curtis Richards. Leave your info." The uneasy feeling that had been growing since I left Tampa suddenly intensified. Where could they be? Della knew I might swing by. I'd hinted as much during our last conversation. She was normally so quick to respond to her phone. Always. "Excuse me, wait up a second." I spun around to find a man from the neighboring house hurrying towards me. He looked determined, somewhere in his mid-40s, with hair that was starting to thin out, dressed in a polo shirt and khakis. He seemed really wired, which was kind of strange given the peaceful suburban vibe. "Are you part of the family?" he asked, slightly out of breath. "Are you Vivian's husband?" His question froze me in place. How did he know Vivian's name? He extended his hand, almost on autopilot, his thoughts clearly somewhere else. "I'm Robert Delaney, your next-door neighbor." He gestured to his house. "Listen, there's something you need to know. About a week ago, some unusual things went down here." He glanced back at Della's place, then back at me, looking like he was searching for the right words. "I heard screaming," he finally said, late at night. "A woman's voice." My heart was starting to race. Robert wasn't holding back. The words tumbled out of him, like he'd been holding them in for ages. It was probably around midnight, maybe a little after, on June 8th to be exact. I remember because it was right before my kid's birthday. That's when I heard yelling from this house. He pointed at Della's front windows. It wasn't just yelling, though. It was distressing. A woman begging for an ambulance, saying she urgently needed help. It felt like my world was tilting. "I got out of bed, went to my front window," Robert went on. "Della and Curtis came outside, right there on the lawn, shouting back at the house, insisting everything was okay, just a bad dream. No real emergency, but that voice." He shook his head. "That was no dream. I've heard people wake up from nightmares before. This was genuine fear." "What did you do?" I managed to ask. "I called 911 anyway. Said someone needed assistance at that address. Della and Curtis saw me on the phone through the window and waved for me to stop, but I'd already made the call." He crossed his arms like he was readying himself for me to question his actions. The ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. Paramedics went inside with Della and Curtis. They came out with a woman on a stretcher. She could barely lift her head. That was Vivian. Everything else around me faded as I focused on Robert, his words hard to process. "She looked barely conscious," he said. "The paramedics acted fast, checking her vitals, asking her gentle questions. Your daughter and her husband just stood there watching. They didn't get in the ambulance, didn't even follow it to the hospital. Instead, they went back inside. By morning, their cars had vanished. Haven't seen them since." My hands began to tremble. I looked at them, caught off guard by the shaking, then turned back to Robert. "Which hospital?" "I don't know. I thought—" He hesitated. "I thought family would have it covered, that someone would update you." Frantically, I grabbed my phone, trying Della again, straight to voicemail. Curtis, the same. I then called the emergency services, trying to keep my voice calm as I identified myself and asked about the ambulance call from a week ago to this address. The dispatcher put me on hold, the line filling with some irritatingly cheerful hold music. Robert watched me, concern etched in his face now that he'd shared his burden. "Emergency services, how may I assist you?" "I'm calling about an ambulance dispatched to 847 Meadowbrook Lane on June 8th, I said. "The patient was my wife, Vivian Morgan. I need to know where she was taken." Keys clicked on the other end. "Orlando Regional Medical Center, sir. The call was logged at 12:43 a.m. "Thank you." I immediately hung up and called the hospital. After being passed through 3 different people, I finally spoke to a tired-sounding nurse in the ICU. "Vivian Morgan." "Yes. She was admitted on June 8th. Serious condition but stable as of yesterday." "What happened to her?" "I can't discuss details over the phone, sir. You'll need to come in to get the information. Are you family?" "I'm her husband." There was a pause. "4th floor ICU. Ask for the charge nurse upon your arrival." I lowered the phone. Robert was still there, watching, waiting. "I'm contacting the police," I told him. "Something's not right here." He nodded immediately. "I'll provide a statement, whatever you need." I then dialed the Orlando Police Department, reported a potential crime, gave them the address, explained what Robert had seen. The officer on the line assured me someone would be there soon to meet me at the house. I was on my way to the car when Robert's voice broke through. The hospital's on Colonial, over at Orlando Regional Medical Center. Just take Highway 50 East. Without missing a beat, I hopped in, turned the key, and sped off, not once looking back. The drive felt surreal, like I was floating through a dream. Traffic lights changed from red to green. People bustled around, clutching shopping bags or sipping their morning coffee, completely in tune with their usual Tuesday groove. But for me, it seemed like my world was crumbling. What happened to Vivian? Why didn't Della call an ambulance for her mom? And why did they just disappear? My mind raced with questions, as if trying to keep up with the speed I was driving. Before long, I was facing the towering glass and concrete of Orlando Regional Medical Center. I parked in the visitor's lot, rode up to the 4th floor, and followed signs to the ICU. A woman in casual wear caught my eye, her detective badge hanging from her belt. "Mr. Morgan," she greeted, extending a hand. "Detective Lisa Thornton, Orlando PD. I got the call about your wife's situation." "Where is she?" I edged in, frustration bubbling in my voice. "Room 412, she replied. "But first, I've got some questions for you. When did you last talk to Vivian?" "2 weeks ago, before she visited our daughter. We texted some, but her replies stopped 3 days ago." Detective Thornton jotted down notes as I shared. "No one told you she was in the hospital?" "A neighbor had alerted me when I got worried," I explained. Her expression turned grave, the detective mask slipping slightly. "She's dealing with severe poisoning, Mr. Morgan, sedatives mixed with heart medication, and it could have been deadly. She's been unconscious most of the week, and we've been trying to contact family." Her words hit me square in the chest. "My daughter and son-in-law were there," I began. "A neighbor heard her calling for help, but they just brushed it off. Then they vanished." "What do you think, Detective? Accident?" Thornton's face grew more severe. "Room 412, she said. "Go see your wife. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." The ICU was dim and quiet, curtains drawn part way, machines beeping with mechanical indifference. Vivian lay there, tubes and wires creating a lifeline, her face seeming even more fragile against the stark white pillows. I dragged a chair close, gently holding her hand, light as a bird's bone. "I'm here now," I whispered, hoping my words reached her. "When you wake up, you'll tell me what they did. And I promise," my tone hardening, "they'll pay for every minute of this." A deep resolve took hold of me. The shocked husband in me started to fade, giving way to the prosecutor I'd been for 3 decades, a man who pieced together evidence meticulously, found clarity in chaos, and knew exactly how to hold people accountable. Della and Curtis made a grave mistake. They left breadcrumbs, witnesses, and importantly, left Vivian alive and underestimated me. I stayed by her bedside, ignoring the nurse's offers for a rest or a hotel room nearby. I never let go of her hand, staying vigilant for any sign of life, any indication she was coming back. Around 5 in the morning, her fingers moved ever so slightly in mine. I straightened, leaning in. Her eyelids fluttered, struggling against the darkness enveloping her. A nurse noticed the change too, checked the monitors, and hit the call button. A doctor arrived quickly, pen light in hand, assessing her responses with practiced precision. Vivian's eyes fluttered open, and at first, she seemed a little out of it, trying to focus as her eyes adjusted to the dim lighting. Eventually, she landed her gaze on me and managed to croak out, "Otis," though her voice was all raspy from the ventilator. She whispered, "Where?" And a nurse quickly fetched some water, holding it steady while Vivian took careful sips. Every drink seemed to hurt, but finally, she could speak more clearly. "How long have I been here?" she asked, sounding shocked when I said it had been a week. Her eyes widened, filled with confusion and fear, as she tried to connect the dots in her cloudy memories. The doctor told us she was stable enough for a chat, and not too long after, Detective Thornton came back, holding up a recorder. Vivian began to tell her story, mixing professionalism and empathy as she went. Her voice trembled as she started the tale. On June 8th, Della whipped up a simple meal, some pasta with veggies and garlic bread. But an hour after eating, Vivian started to feel dizzy, nauseous, and her heart pounded like crazy, making it hard to breathe. She fidgeted with her hands and told how she'd asked Della to call an ambulance. But Della just shrugged it off as food poisoning, saying rest would do Vivian good. But it didn't. Everything spun, and her chest hurt like hell. Desperate, she pleaded, "Della, please. Something's wrong with my heart." Vivian paused for a moment, trying to pull herself together. But Della just shot Curtis a look, and he positioned himself by the door, as if on guard, refusing to let her go. I listened, each word striking hard. Vivian described screaming, hoping somebody passing by might hear, but then everything went dark. The next thing she knew, she was waking up in the hospital. Detective Thornton took in Vivian's story, turning off the recorder to let her catch her breath. The toxicology report shows dangerous levels of zolpidem and dioxin, lethal doses for someone your age, Mrs. Morgan. Someone had to mix those on purpose. Do you recognize those names? Thornton explained they were names for sleeping pills and heart medication. You don't have prescriptions for them. Did Della or Curtis have access to these drugs? Vivian furrowed her brow, thinking back. She recalled seeing pill bottles in their bathroom. Curtis had mentioned having anxiety and sleep issues when she first arrived, but she hadn't given it much thought. As Detective Thornton kept jotting down notes and asking more questions, piecing everything together, I was doing the same in my head, connecting all the dots and noting any contradictions. "I need to conduct further interviews," Thornton eventually said. "Della and Curtis just returned home to Orlando. Apparently they were on a trip." A chill ran through me. "I'm going with you," I insisted, getting up. But Thornton reminded me that it was official police business due to my involvement with the case. "They're not just suspects. They tried to murder my wife," I argued. But Thornton assured me, softening her tone, "We need to do this the right way. Trust me to handle it." She was right. With all my years in the prosecutor's office, I knew how vital it was to keep investigations clean. So I sat back down. Time dragged on. Vivian faded in and out of sleep, exhausted just from staying awake. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, watching the monitors, trying not to picture Curtis stopping her from getting help. Later in the afternoon, Detective Thornton returned, her expression saying so much before she even spoke. "They admit Vivian was sick that night," Thornton began, taking a seat. "But they claim she took the pills on her own due to stress over family finances and sleep problems. They say they were about to call an ambulance when a neighbor stepped in, and they left for the Bahamas the very next day because, according to them, the trip was prearranged, and they didn't see the emergency since the hospital said Vivian was stable." Vivian's voice, though still weak, now brimmed with anger. "That's a lie." "I believe you," Thornton said. "But their stories match perfectly. A defense could argue that the poisoning messed with your memory. Right now, it's your word against theirs. We need more evidence." Once she was gone, I just sat there, mulling over my 30 years in the prosecutor's office. Never in a million years did I think I'd be using those skills to sort out a mess involving my own kin. You know how it goes with these investigations? They drag on. It's mostly circumstantial stuff, which means even if you manage to bring charges, getting a conviction is a whole other ballgame. All the while, Della and Curtis would be gallivanting around, spreading their tall tales to anyone gullible enough to listen. I found myself looking over at Vivian, who looked so frail and beat up lying there in that hospital bed. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled through until I found an old contact I hadn't reached out to in forever. Marcus Webb, the private eye who'd helped me crack many tough cases back in the day. As a prosecutor, I got pretty sharp at turning flimsy evidence into solid convictions, often by digging into financial records and uncovering hidden connections. So, without hesitating, I punched in his number. "Hey Marcus, it's Otis Morgan. I have a situation I need your help with. This one's personal," I admitted. The following Thursday morning, we met at a nearly deserted coffee shop in Tampa. Marcus had 3 file folders lined up on the table and wore a serious look as he revealed what he'd managed to dig up in just 2 days. "Your daughter's made 47 calls to creditors in the last 3 months, he started, sliding a folder my way. "Collection agencies, credit card outfits, mortgage services, the whole works. Most of these accounts are overdue by at least 60 days, if not more." As I flipped through the folder, I found phone records, bank statements, credit reports. My daughter was drowning in debt with money owed left and right. Online gambling, sports betting, poker rooms in Orlando and Miami. The list went on. Altogether, we're talking $85,000 on credit cards and another $120,000 blown on gambling across various platforms. And to top it off, their mortgage was 2 months in arrears, and foreclosure action had kicked off the week prior. "And Della knew all this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer was yes. "She got in touch with your estate attorney 4 weeks before the poisoning, on June 10th, Marcus elaborated. "She was asking about probate timelines, what happens when someone dies with or without a will, and if adult children automatically inherit anything. The attorney thought she was just curious about family planning." But Marcus added, "That's not simple curiosity, Otis. That's plotting." I shut the folder with a realization echoing the hundreds of cases I'd dealt with. Financial desperation paired with opportunity gives someone a motive. But proving it? That's a whole different beast. After that, I headed straight to James Walker's office downtown. When it came to the tough cases needing civil litigation expertise, James was my man. His office, decked out with wall-length windows overlooking the calm sailboats on Tampa Bay, was a sight to behold. Walker scanned Marcus's report with the laser focus that had made him top in his field. "To win in criminal court, you've got to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt," Walker eventually noted. "That could be a tall order with their alibi all neat and Vivian's patchy memory. But over in civil court, you just need a 51% preponderance of evidence. Even if the criminal charges don't stick, we can definitely pin this down on civil grounds and make their lives a miserable uphill battle." I asked, "What's the game plan?" "File for wrongful injury, emotional distress, medical costs," Walker proposed. "We'll freeze their assets during discovery, make them testify under oath. Lay bare their financial motives for the criminal investigators. Civil litigation can hit hard when it's wielded right." He leaned back, fingers like a steeple. "And I'm guessing you want it done with some force?" "Absolutely, I want it done right. But, yeah, with all the assertiveness we've got," I replied. Walker shot me a smile, acknowledging our shared intention. "I'll have the documents ready by the end of the day." Then it was over to see our estate attorney, Gerald Simmons, whose office was a smaller, cozy place over in Hyde Park. He'd drawn up our wills about 5 years ago. Pretty straightforward stuff, leaving everything to each other, then to Della once we both were gone. "There's something I need to change," I began, laying out the situation. "Scratch Della out entirely. Let it all go to Vivian, and then to charity if she passes before me. Plus, add a clause that if Della contests the will, she forfeits any claim to it." Gerald jotted notes rapidly, not missing a beat. "Including a no-contest clause? That's fairly typical when there's a potential for disputes. I can have the will updated by tomorrow," he assured me. "Today," I insisted urgently, telling him I'd wait. He seemed to grasp the situation without needing further explanation from me. Later that evening, Vivian was finally back from the hospital, sitting in our living room. She seemed weaker than I remembered, wrapped in a blanket even in the Tampa heat. During dinner, I tried to show her Marcus's report. She managed just 3 pages before putting it down. She called about the will a month before all this, Vivian said, her voice hollow as she absorbed the revelation that didn't fit her image of our daughter. She actually planned it. It looks like that, I admitted, remembering how I'd kept insisting she was just going through a tough phase, that she would never. But Vivian's words faltered, overtaken by the weight of the truth settling in. My hands trembled slightly as the realization of how off my judgment had been hit me. I slid closer to her, careful not to intrude. Hospitals have a way of creating invisible boundaries. Loving our daughter wasn't wrong, I assured her, but her betrayal of that love was. We sat there quietly for a while. Then Vivian straightened up, determination in her eyes. "What's next?" she inquired. I laid out Walker's plan, the civil lawsuit, freezing assets, the discovery process to uncover the full story. Vivian listened, nodded once. "Let's do it," she decided. I called Della on Friday morning, and she answered on the second ring, trying to sound upbeat. "Dad, how's Mom? I've been really worried." I spoke gently. "Your mom needs her family right now. Let's discuss this in person. Can you and Curtis come down to Tampa this weekend? We need to sort everything out." There was a pause while she likely considered her next step. "All right," she agreed eventually. "We want to help. Saturday's good." "Great," I replied. "Come by around noon." After the call, I authorized Walker's lawsuit. By Monday, Della and Curtis would receive their legal notices. But first, I wanted to witness their reactions, thinking no one knew what they'd done. I signed my name, feeling the weight of the pen, not out of regret, but from the clear sense that everything was about to change. The lawsuit lay before me, 38 pages laying out the charges like an indictment. James Walker had been thorough. His accusations were supported by medical records, damages meticulously calculated. $2 million for attempted murder, the emotional strain, medical expenses nearing $200,000. Walker's voice crackled through the phone. "We'll file within the hour. Once they're served, there's no turning back. You sure about this?" "Go ahead," I said. "Understood. I'll call once they've been served," he affirmed. I hung up and pictured the upcoming moment. A process server at Della's door, handing over a thick envelope. Della opening it, seeing words like attempted murder and millions in damages. The sense of satisfaction I felt was cold and intentional. This was only the beginning. 3 hours later, a call came, not from Walker, but from Della. I let it ring a few times, steadying my voice before answering. "Yes," I said. Her voice came through, outraged. $2 million? Dad, have you lost your mind? This is insane. It was an accident. Mom took those pills herself to sleep. You're destroying our lives over a misunderstanding." She stuck to the story she'd told the detective. I stayed quiet, letting her talk, noting each claim she made. We were trying to help her. She was stressed about money, the house, and she just overdosed on pills. We would have called for help, but the nosy neighbor got involved. "And now you're suing us? Your own daughter?" She paused. I broke the silence. "You had a choice that night, Della. When your mother was begging for help, you chose not to call an ambulance. You made your decision. Now you'll face that in court." Her voice changed from panic to anger. "You're wrecking my life over nothing. We're family. You don't let family die over money." I ended the call. About 20 minutes drifted by before the phone buzzed again, and this time it was Curtis on the line. Without bothering with pleasantries, I picked up. Curtis's voice was careful, almost like he was trying to close a business deal. "Otis, we need to talk. I get that this doesn't look good, but there's a way to fix it, don't you think? Families handle these matters among themselves. We could maybe come to an arrangement, maybe even settle it with some cash." As Curtis spun his web of desperation, I found myself wandering to the window, my gaze settling on Tampa's skyline. Once he finished, I replied, "And how exactly were you planning to pay? From the $85,000 debt or the $120,000 lost in gambling? Or was it the inheritance you were banking on once Vivian was out of the picture?" Silence hung in the air before he stumbled over his words, his slick demeanor crumbling. "How did you... What? What exactly are you on about? We aren't cutting any deals, Curtis. I'll see you in court," I said, wrapping up that conversation. Later on, my phone buzzed once more, and it was Detective Thornton. "Executed the search warrant this morning. Found a few things you might want to know about," she shared. "Like what?" I inquired. "Well, an empty prescription bottle was found in the master bathroom. Sleeping pills, specifically Zulpadam, prescribed to Curtis 3 months ago. There should have been 30, but now the bottle's empty and his fingerprints are all over it," she mentioned before pausing. "Here's the kicker. His laptop. The browser history has searches from roughly 3 weeks before the event. Stuff on overdose symptoms, lethal doses of sleeping pills. He looked up exactly what happened to your wife before it went down. That's premeditation, Mr. Morgan." I quickly scribbled notes as she spoke, key details like dates, search terms, prescription info, and timelines. "The DA's just about to authorize arrest warrants for Curtis and Della," Thornton continued. "They're looking at charges of first-degree attempted murder and conspiracy, plus obstruction for lying. We're moving in tonight." "Keep me posted," I requested. "Will do," she affirmed. That night, around 7-ish, Thornton reached out again. "They're in custody," she informed. "Both picked up at their place about an hour ago. Processing's happening now. Bail's set for tomorrow morning, and with their charges and financial situation making them flight risks, the bail's gonna be steep." Vivian, seated next to me and clutching my hand, listened in as the call was on speaker. Her eyes were teary, but no tears fell. "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" she quietly asked. I squeezed her hand tighter. "No, it just means justice is being served." My phone pinged with a text from Walker. "Arrest warrant served. The civil case now has criminal charges backing it. Asset freeze hearing in 3 days. We're on track." I read the message aloud and glanced at Vivian. She was staring at a framed picture on the side table, a shot of Della at 7, beaming with joy, perched on my shoulders at the beach. Vivian reached for it, hesitated, then turned it face down. "I can't look at her right now," she whispered. I nodded, feeling much the same. The bail hearing rolled around on Wednesday morning. Curtis and Della appeared via video link from jail, both donned in orange jumpsuits that seemed designed for shame. The judge set bail at $250,000 each, a hefty sum, but not impossible to cover. By the next afternoon, they'd made bail through a bondsman using their home as collateral, and come Friday, they'd brought Michael Brennan on board. Brennan had carved out a reputation for himself. He'd gone from being a public defender to a criminal attorney known for cutthroat tactics and media manipulation. Just hours into taking the case, his strategy was clear. The Tampa Tribune ran a story Saturday morning, front page, below the fold. Father sues daughter over alleged poisoning. Defense claims it was a tragic accident. While the article seemed balanced, the photo conveyed a different message. Della looked weary and vulnerable, her tears visible. There was nothing showing Vivian in her hospital bed. Sunday brought the true hit. The Tribune featured an interview with Della and Curtis, cozy in their living room, speaking to a reporter about the tragic misunderstanding ripping their family apart. I read it while sitting in the kitchen as Vivian busied herself with cooking. In the piece, Della described what was meant to be a nice visit with her mom that took a wrong turn when Vivian got anxious about money and took sleeping pills without letting anyone know. Curtis said they were just about to get help when a neighbor freaked out. Both Della and Curtis couldn't believe I didn't trust them and felt I was ruining my daughter's life with baseless claims. Their lawyer was quoted throughout the article. Brennan made them look like they were being victimized twice, first by Vivian's accidental overdose, and now by what he called my malicious legal action. "Check this out," I told Vivian. "Brennan's slamming us for supposedly using the legal system to get back at relatives who were supposedly devastated by the choices they had to make during a crisis." Vivian plunked her coffee cup down a bit harder than usual. "Tough decisions? They just stood around while I begged for help and did zip." "I hear you," I replied. "Then why does reading this make me feel like we're on the wrong side here?" she asked, irritation creeping into her voice. That was Brennan's goal: spin the narrative before the trial began. Make the jury wonder if the attempted murder charges were just panic gone wrong. It's a standard defense trick. That afternoon, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Most of the calls came from friends and former colleagues from my days as a prosecutor, people who've known me forever, and every conversation was cautious. Richard Martinez, a retired judge, took a delicate approach. "Otis, I saw that article. You know, there are always two sides, but do you think everyone's just overstressed? Family disputes never seem to be as clear-cut as they appear." I laid out the facts for him: the internet searches, the empty pill bottle, financial motives. He listened, nodding, but doubt hung in the silence after. Carol Henderson, who used to be a victim advocate when I was a prosecutor, had a different take. "I'm not doubting you, but what if Vivian's memory is foggy because of what she went through? Victims sometimes mistake suspicion for facts." More calls poured in, all sounding supportive on the surface but questioning underneath. It was obvious the media plan was working. Come Monday morning, Walker brought some news. "Brennan's retaliated. They're suing you and Vivian for defamation, claiming your allegations damaged Della's reputation and Curtis's contracting business, and they want $500,000. A staggering demand." "It's outrageous," Walker said. "Of course it is. It's a scare tactic to back you down, but coupled with the media spin, he's shaping a narrative that could influence a jury. We need to brace for a battle." We had a hearing scheduled for Wednesday to talk about freezing their assets. Walker walked me through the strategy. We'd highlight the financial incentives and argue that Della and Curtis might move their money around to avoid paying. The court could hold their accounts and prevent property transactions, securing our potential win. But first, we had to stand firm under the pressure. On Tuesday afternoon at the grocery store, I bumped into Thomas Kirby from my book club. Tom spotted me and hesitated before approaching, looking more like a nervous witness than a clubmate. "Otis, how are you holding up? I read about it all in the news. It's got to be tough." He fidgeted. "I don't mean to pry, but have you thought about maybe mediation? Sometimes family issues clear up with some distance." I cut in. "Tom, my daughter tried to kill my wife over money. That's not a misunderstanding." He turned red. "Of course not. The article made it seem more complicated." I explained it was written by Della's lawyer. He mumbled something, wished me well, and fled, even leaving his grocery basket behind. That night, Vivian joined me at my desk as I sifted through paperwork. She sat beside me calmly, though clearly weary. "They're questioning you," she stated. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. Do you doubt yourself?" she asked. I looked at her, still recovering, but with clearer vision. "Sometimes," I admitted. "When everyone keeps insisting you're mistaken, you start to second-guess yourself." Vivian was adamant. "Listen closely," she said. "Our daughter ignored me when I was dying. Straight up. This isn't a simple misunderstanding. It's attempted murder." She moved in closer, determined. "Don't let them twist the truth." Her confidence brought me some comfort. Not that all my doubts disappeared. We hoped Wednesday's hearing would align with our version of events. On Wednesday morning, as I drowned in case files at the kitchen counter, Detective Thornton gave me a ring. She cut to the chase. Curtis cracked. She explained that during their morning follow-up, she confronted him about discrepancies between his and Della's stories and asked about their plans. That's when he folded. I grabbed a pen to take notes. What did he say? I asked eagerly. She responded swiftly, I came up with the scheme to solve our money issues, all right? But Della was in the loop. She knew everything. Before his lawyer could stop him, he'd already confessed enough. I jotted down crucial points, underlining them for emphasis. The picture was clear. Della was fully involved. That's premeditated, I remarked. And a conspiracy. Exactly, she confirmed. The defense unraveled from the inside. Once we ended the call, I reached out to James Walker. He was already in the mix thanks to his links to the DA's office, but he had more insight into what unfolded after Curtis's admission. Brennan gathered them in a station conference room. According to Walker, Brennan tried to quietly discuss damage control, but Della's angry voice carried through the door. She lashed out at Curtis, calling him foolish for admitting anything to the police. Curtis barked back, accusing her of wanting the money just as much and being in on the planning, so why should he face the music alone? Their unity crumbled as Brennan watched, and Walker noted that when defendants start blaming each other, it's a prosecutor's dream. I knew that. I'd built cases capitalizing on defendants' failing loyalties and instincts of self-preservation. It inevitably worked. That afternoon, Walker contacted me with a proposal. The DA's office wanted to make a strategic move. They were ready to offer Curtis a deal through his lawyer, plead to lesser charges in exchange for testifying against Della. Instead of facing attempted murder, he'd be charged with conspiracy, reducing potential prison time from 15-20 years to 8-10. Curtis is our weak link, I thought aloud. He was already on edge, terrified. His gambling habit and tendency to crumble under pressure would lead him to accept the deal, but we needed your nod to coordinate with the DA. I wandered over to the study window, taking in Tampa's afternoon light. Using Curtis against Della was shrewd, perhaps a bit calculating. But then I thought of Vivian's ordeal, Curtis blocking her way, dismissing her pleas, coldly calculating in that moment. Make the offer, I decided. Curtis got wind of the deal the next day. Walker relayed that Curtis was seriously weighing it, despite Brennan advising to take it to court. Brennan argued that if Curtis turned on Della, he might look worse to a jury, but Curtis was stuck between the fear of prison and being labeled a traitor. He asked for 48 hours to mull it over. As Curtis pondered, Della made her own move. She hired a new attorney, Patricia Vance, citing a conflict of interest since Brennan couldn't represent them both if they took different paths. Vance quickly filed a motion painting Curtis as the main perpetrator, claiming Della was manipulated or coerced by a controlling husband. Walker filled me in over the phone, almost sounding impressed. Legally, it wasn't strong given the evidence, but it showed she was relentless. She'd throw Curtis under the bus to save herself, fighting like she had nothing left to lose, because really, she didn't. Exactly, I said in agreement. That evening, I sat down with Vivian to talk about everything that had happened. There was Curtis's slip-up during questioning, his plea deal, and Della's strategy to blame others. Vivian listened intently and then asked something I didn't expect. If Curtis testified against Della, was it certain she'd be convicted? I thought carefully. It wasn't a guarantee, but the odds were good. His testimony, the evidence on the laptop, the prescriptions, and Vivian's accounts all built a strong case. She nodded thoughtfully. I really hope he accepts the deal, she said, not so that Curtis gets off easy, but because I want Della to face the consequences. Her voice held a conviction that reminded me why we were doing this, not just for revenge, although that was part of it, but to make sure that what happened to her wouldn't be in vain. The phone rang late that night, after 11. It was Walker, sounding excited but keeping it in check. Curtis's lawyer called. He's taking the deal. Full testimony, full cooperation, the whole 9 yards. He's basically securing Della's conviction for us. I took that in, closing my eyes for a second. Across the room, Vivian was watching me closely. I covered the phone. Curtis is going to testify against her, I told her. Vivian's expression didn't change, but she held onto the chair's armrest so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Walker explained the next steps. We're arranging Curtis's deposition for 3 days from now. After that, Della's defense is done for. She'll get it too. After he finished, I stayed there quietly with Vivian, neither of us saying anything for a long time. Then she spoke up, saying what we were both thinking. This is really happening. Yeah, I said. It sure is. On Monday morning, we filed the motion to freeze their assets. I spent most of Sunday working with Walker, going over Marcus Webb's financial analysis. It laid out every debt, late payment, and urgent cash withdrawal they had in the 6 months before the poisoning. It showed a family at the brink, desperate for the inheritance that could save them. The hearing was slated for Wednesday afternoon, with Judge Martinez presiding. He went through the evidence with the kind of diligence you'd expect from a judge familiar with financial matters. Walker presented our case: $25,000 in debts, foreclosure already looming, and Della's call to the estate attorney a month before the poisoning. It all pointed to guilt. Della's lawyer, Patricia Vance, argued that freezing their assets would prevent them from paying the mortgage, leading to inevitable foreclosure. Walker countered, saying they hadn't been paying anyway for 3 months, and the freeze was merely formalizing their situation. Judge Martinez sided with us. They couldn't touch their bank accounts or sell their property. The house they'd put up for bail was now in legal limbo. They're stuck financially, Walker told me afterward. Can't sell, can't take out loans, can't access their savings. Everything's locked until the civil case is over. Curtis's deposition was set for Friday. Walker advised I stay away, thinking my presence might complicate things. So, I stayed home, letting Walker manage it with the DA's assistant. That evening, he called to update me. Curtis confessed to everything, Walker said, sorting through 47 pages of testimony. Curtis described how he researched drugs online, forged a second dioxin prescription using his doctor's pad, and mixed them into Devian's pasta sauce. He recounted every conversation with Della, how they saw this as the only way out of their financial mess, and how she just watched him add the meds without a word. She wasn't just a bystander, I said. She was fully in on it. Curtis's testimony made that clear. We had a rock-solid case, with the laptop searches, prescription forgeries in the medical records, and Vivian's story of Della's refusal to call for help supporting it. That evening, Detective Thornton called with more news. Curtis's testimony led the DA to bring additional charges against Della. Not just attempted murder, but also conspiracy to commit murder and being an accessory. They issued a new arrest warrant on Friday night, and by Saturday morning, Della was in custody. This time, with no bail. Sunday served up an unexpected surprise when an email from Patricia Vance popped up, titled Confidential Settlement Discussion. Sitting at my desk, I opened it and found that Vance, representing Della, suggested we quietly settle the issue out of court. Della would agree to lesser charges like reckless endangerment instead of attempted murder if we agreed to drop the civil lawsuit. Vance mentioned that Della was still Otis's daughter and hinted that families should heal wounds rather than deepen them. I paused for about 30 seconds, then deleted the email. Not much later, Vivian walked in. "What was that about?" she asked. "Della's lawyer is trying to pitch a plea deal and wants us to drop the lawsuit," I said. "And what did you respond?" she inquired further. "I didn't respond. I just deleted the email," I said back. Vivian settled into the chair across from me. "Good. We can't let them think this is something we can just bargain away. She nearly killed me for money, and that's not negotiable." When Monday rolled around, I took a screenshot of the deleted email and forwarded it to James Walker, attaching a simple message. No deals, no compromise. We're going through with the trial on all counts. Walker got back to me almost instantly. Understood. I'll relay that to the DA's office. Della's lawyer will get the hint. The civil lawsuit continued, with the asset freeze still affecting them, and Della was hit with more severe criminal charges. Walker unleashed a slew of new motions. One of them aimed to make Curtis jointly and severally liable, meaning if we won the civil case, Curtis would be responsible for the entire $2 million even though he had already made his own deal. That didn't erase his civil responsibilities. That day, the bank accelerated its foreclosure proceedings on Della and Curtis's home. With 3 overdue mortgage payments and frozen assets stopping any money flow, the bank was moving to take the house. They had 30 days to pack up and leave. Marcus Webb, who was still monitoring their finances for me, summed it up. They're losing everything, he said. The house, savings, any remaining equity. The civil judgment will seize anything left, which isn't much. They gambled and lost, I acknowledged plainly, without any satisfaction, just stating the outcome. The days quickly passed, and Curtis officially signed his plea deal on July 2nd. In court, he confessed to plotting the murder, detailed the plans, and accepted an 8-year prison sentence. The judge approved the deal. Della's preliminary hearing was set for July 10th. Armed with Curtis's testimony, the laptop evidence, Vivian's account, and the fake prescriptions, the judge would decide if the case should proceed to trial. Walker reassured me it was a formality. The evidence was solid, but Della would need to appear in court. For the first time since her arrest, I'd have to face her. On the night of July 4th, Vivian and I were on the porch. Fireworks popped in the distance, neighbors were in a celebratory spirit, but we sat in silence. "Are you ready for next week?" Vivian asked. "For the hearing?" I contemplated seeing Della in court, listening to the charges, watching her realize she'd failed completely. "Yes," I answered. "I'm ready." Then, on July 6th, the news blew up. While having coffee with Vivian, we saw it on Tampa's channel. The headline was stark. Daughter and son-in-law charged in poison plot. Inheritance motive. This time, the narrative was different. No tiptoeing, no even-handedness, just the facts. Video from the courthouse showed Della and Curtis, and the anchor detailed the fake prescriptions, laptop searches, and $15 million inheritance scheme. A legal analyst called it one of the most merciless cases in recent Florida history. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends I hadn't heard from in years, and those who initially doubted me during Brennan's media blitz were reaching out to apologize, admitting they were shocked by the incriminating evidence. I ignored most calls. Mid-morning, Marcus Webb updated me on their jobs. The real estate agency cut ties, he announced, adding that they'd issued a statement expressing sympathy for my wife and distancing themselves from Della's alleged actions. Curtis got the boot from his dealership yesterday because of a moral misconduct clause, and his parents aren't backing him up anymore. They even put out a statement cutting ties. I wasn't celebrating, just noting down what happened like I was gathering evidence. No job, shattered reputation, no family support. Those are the repercussions, not some form of revenge. They're on their own now, Marcus pointed out, seeing that they were truly isolated without work, friends, or family. In the days that followed, I heard more from different people. Friends cut them off, and neighbors avoided them like the plague. Curtis's parents released a statement that was really harsh. They said, "We're devastated by our son's actions. We're standing with the victims and have no further relationship with Curtis." It was cold and absolute. I got why they did it. They wanted to keep their distance to avoid any guilt by association. It's what parents sometimes do when their child turns into something they can't recognize. It made me think about how Vivian and I were seen, as parents of someone capable of planning such a terrible thing. 8 days after Della got arrested, a letter showed up in our mailbox, and it wasn't from lawyers. It came straight from her. Just from the envelope, I knew it was Della's. Her handwriting's unmistakable. When Vivian saw it in my hand, she asked if it was from her. I nodded, and we went inside to the kitchen table where I opened it. Vivian took a seat across from me as I started to read. The letter was 3 handwritten pages long, and Della's voice echoed through the words. She wrote, "Dad, please, I know how this looks, and I know I messed up. Things spun out of control with the debts and Curtis's gambling. I wasn't thinking clearly. I never wanted Mom dead. I panicked. I'm sorry. I love you both so much. You're my parents. Isn't there a way to make this right? Can't we be a family again?" It was a mix of confession, justification, and a desperate plea. I read it twice, trying to find any sign of genuine regret. But all I found was self-pity and manipulation. She still acted like a victim rather than the person behind a failed murder attempt. Without saying anything, I handed it to Vivian. After she read it, she asked, "What will you do?" I left and started writing my reply by hand. Just 1 page, direct and to the point. Della, you made your choices that night. You let your mother suffer instead of helping her. You valued money over her life. Those were your clear, deliberate decisions. What's done can't be undone. There's no family to return to. From now on, all communication goes through my lawyer. I signed it, sealed it, and had it delivered via James Walker's office. No personal exchange, no room for emotions to interfere. Later, Walker called with a new update. The civil trial is set for July 15th, just 5 days off. With the criminal case nearly done, the judge wants a quick wrap-up. We'll secure the full judgment of $1.5 million, though I expect them to declare bankruptcy. It's not about the money, I told him. I know, he replied. It's about making it official, marking the record with what happened and what they owe. It'll be a lasting part of their story. That night, I sat in my study, going over the civil case details one more time. It was a thick stack of documents. Medical costs totaling $197,000. Hospital stays, therapy sessions, all detailing Vivian's ordeal. Her time lost in a coma, and the long road to recovery. The door behind me creaked softly as Vivian came in, looking stronger, more assured than before. "The trial is in 5 days," she reminded me. I nodded, and she took a seat next to me at the desk, the same place she'd been throughout this tough fight. We were in this together, seeking justice. "So, will you have to testify?" I asked, curious and perhaps a little concerned. She paused, thinking it over, then nodded. "If it means they face the consequences, absolutely. I'll go all in." Her voice was rock solid, brimming with resolve. I reached for her hand, and she accepted it. Walking into the courtroom, it struck me as surprisingly small for something the media called one of the most jaw-dropping cases in Central Florida. Judge Harrison was in charge, her expression unreadable as the clerk announced, "The state of Florida versus Della Richards and Curtis Richards." Della was first to enter, sporting a gray suit that looked like it came from her new attorney. She seemed drained, eyes puffy, whether from exhaustion, tears, or both, was hard to say. Curtis followed, separated from her by more than just distance. Their legal ties were severed too. His plea deal was already squared away, but he still had to show up for Della's arraignment. As if sucked into the weight of the moment, the charges echoed in the room. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, each accusation heavy, potentially landing Della in prison for 25 years to life. Her lawyer, Patricia Vance, entered a typical not guilty plea in the face of damning evidence. The trial was scheduled for September 12th, just 2 months away, but as we exited the building, Walker caught my arm. "The DA suspects Della will shift her plea before trial. he confided. Once she sees Curtis's full testimony and everything they've got against her, she'll probably cut a deal. No one wants to gamble on a jury with all this. Turns out, Walker nailed it. Della took a plea deal 3 weeks later on July 31st. She admitted guilt to attempted second-degree murder, accepting a 15-year sentence with parole on the table after 12 years served. The judge gave it a nod on August 4th. I was in the thick of... By the time sentencing rolled around, Vivian and I were back in court. We grabbed seats in the second row, wanting to see Della up close when her judgment day came. Judge Harrison didn't mince words. Ms. Richards, you planned to kill your own mother for money. You researched meticulously, prepped everything, and ignored her cries for help. She survived because of a neighbor's brave act, not because of your mercy. Della was shaking, tears streaming down. Whether from guilt or self-pity was unclear. The judge handed her a 15-year prison sentence, with parole as an option after 12. That parole, he emphasized, isn't automatic. It hinges on real remorse and rehabilitation, neither of which I witnessed today, he stated, his gavel landing with finality. Officers whisked Della away through a side door, her gaze never meeting ours. Maybe she couldn't face us, or maybe she knew there wasn't anything worth a backward glance. Curtis's fate was decided on the same day. Despite his cooperation, he was hit with an 8-year sentence, the judge balancing his helpfulness with his principal role in the crime. He was the one who actually administered the poison. Without parole, he wouldn't see freedom until 2033. Following the criminal convictions, the civil trial felt less intense. With guilty pleas locked in, it was more of a rubber stamp process. On August 15th, Walker unfolded our case. Expensive medical bills, the agony endured, the emotional scars, not to mention permanent damage to Vivian's health. The defense had nothing to counter with. What could they possibly say? Judge Martinez awarded us everything we asked for, $1.5 million. However, collecting that sum was another story. Both Della and Curtis had declared bankruptcy. Their home was auctioned off. Their savings vanished. Future income could face garnishments, but prison paychecks barely cover basics. Walker later informed us, "We might never see a dime, but the judgment exists. It formally recognizes the harm they caused and what they owe. If they ever get lucky, inheritance, a lottery win, even a book or movie deal, we can chase it. That judgment doesn't go away." Later that night, Vivian whipped up a simple pasta dish. It wasn't exactly the one Della had messed with, but it was enough to bring back memories. We ate quietly, not because we didn't have anything to say, but because we both understood the silence. Once we finished and tidied up, Vivian broke the quiet spell. "Do you have any second thoughts about the lawsuits, the court case, walking away for good?" I took a moment, gave it some serious thought, and said, "No. Protecting you was my priority. I needed to make sure they paid for what they did. I'd do it all over again without blinking." "Even though she's your daughter?" she asked. "Especially because she took advantage of our family ties to hide her actions. That makes it worse, not better," I replied with conviction. Vivian nodded slowly, adding, "I feel the same. I thought maybe I'd be wrestling with guilt or doubt by now, but all I feel is relief that it's over." We stood together by our living room window, peering out at Tampa's nightlights flickering on. The city thrummed along as usual, people driving home, cars buzzing through the streets. From the outside, everything looked normal, unchanged, but for us, everything had shifted. Not in the obvious ways. Our home and routines were the same, but deep down, something fundamental had moved. We'd faced betrayal from within, a threat from the very person who was supposed to protect us. We didn't just survive, we made sure justice was served. We put measures in place, consequences enforced. The inheritance Della coveted would elude her, going instead to charity. The house she desired would serve strangers. Was it all worth what we gave up? Vivian asked softly. We didn't lose as much as you might think, I replied. We lost someone who was willing to harm you, which isn't a loss, it's removing a danger. She leaned closer. I guess you're right. Summer slipped into September, and slowly, normal returned. Vivian kept up with physical therapy, regaining the strength she lost during her hospital stay. I started doing some consulting, mentoring young prosecutors through tough cases. We spent time with old friends, ones who'd stood by us throughout. The media's spotlight turned elsewhere. As for Della and Curtis, they turned into footnotes of family betrayal and greed, tales that were big news once, but now whispered as warnings. Sometimes my thoughts drifted back to the daughter I'd raised, the little girl who sat on my shoulders at the beach and called for advice. That version of her was gone, lost long before I even noticed. What remained was a woman sitting in prison, facing a 15-year sentence for trying to kill her mother. That was the harsh reality she had become. Facing it was tough, but absolutely necessary. One night in mid-September, Vivian and I found ourselves at the same window we stood by after the legal battles. The view was unchanged, the city lights twinkling below, paying no mind to our personal drama. Do you ever think about her? Vivian asked. Sometimes, I admitted. More often, I think about what would have happened if Robert hadn't stepped in, if that night ended with you gone and them getting everything. But it didn't go down like that. We fought back because we wouldn't let them have the final say. Vivian turned to me. Thank you for believing in me, for standing by me, for choosing truth over family ties. I held her hand. You're my family. You're who I protect. We stood together as night wrapped around us, survivors of an experience that could have shattered us, but didn't. The wounds might never fully heal. Scars like these don't just vanish, but we saw to it that those responsible paid for what they did. And that was enough.